Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you as always for our weekly devotionals. And I hope that you're off to a great start to your spring break week. I'm here in my office and I'm standing in front of one of my favorite paintings. This is a painting by Kenneth Wyatt, and it's a painting of the Apostle Paul. And the first time that I saw this painting was at the Riley Center at Southwestern. When I saw it, I knew I need to have that in my office. So on those nights when I sit down and I don't feel like doing my homework, I can look up and I can see Paul laboring through the night with the candle burning and remind myself I also need to press forward. And when I think of Paul's words, one of my favorite verses is in Romans chapter 1, verse 16, where he speaks to the church at Rome and he says to them, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for the salvation of those who believe." And when you really think about his message there, it carries two very important truths. The first thing is he says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel." Think about it. Why would he say that? Well, it means that there were those who were. And the reason for this was because at that time, the church at Rome, and indeed all of the Christian churches at that time, were facing terrible persecution because they were aligned with the name of Christ. But Paul says, don't be ashamed. Press forward. Don't compromise your faith, because there were many in the church at that time that were trying to figure out how they could fit their Christian faith with the world. How can we walk in the world? How can we live in the world? How can we belong to the world and yet still be able to retain our Christianity? But Paul says, you can't do it. What does light have to do with darkness? How can you put Jesus and the world together? For indeed, one does not know the other. And this last Sunday, we looked at John chapter 1, verses 9 to 13, and it carries the same message. As we anticipate the resurrection this next month, remember what I told you. Before you can really fully appreciate and understand the resurrection, even the death and the burial before that, you have to understand that Jesus came to a world that not only did not accept him, but it did not know him. You see, there in John chapter 1 and verse 9, it says that the true light had come to the world, and it enlightens every man. And even though the world was made through him, the world did not know him. And that word in Greek, know, egno, is a word that not only implies that they didn't recognize him, but that they couldn't relate to him. They didn't have anything in common. And that's a very, very important message for you and I as Christians. You see, the world doesn't have anything in common with the Christian beliefs. The world can't relate to the Christian thought process. You see, what the world says is popular and good and desirable, God says the opposite. Jesus' words go contrary to many times what the world says. And so if you truly aim to be a follower of Christ, you have to be ready to stand apart from everyone else. You have to be ready to stand ostracized from the world and indeed insulted and persecuted, not only like Jesus, but many in the early church. And so it's a very important message for us as Christians to understand what not only Paul was saying, but what John was saying. But there's a beautiful ending to that. In John chapter 1, again, verse 12, he says that for those who would believe, they would be given the right to be called children of God. And then he says something truly powerful, even to those who believe in his name. And think about that. It means that when you align yourself to the name of Christ, that means that you align to everything that Jesus' name stands for. So that means that we can't take a portion of Jesus and try to compromise with the world. We can't take a portion of one and try to mix it with the other. You either do or you don't stand with Christ and what it stands for. So be encouraged on this day. Do not be ashamed of the gospel, is what Paul says. Understand that the name of Jesus is aligned with things that go against this world, and you just need to be okay with that. And when you begin to understand that there is a privilege to that, despite all of the difficulties and all of the challenges, then truly you can begin to understand the life that is full of the gospel and its power that Paul talked about and John talked about as well. May you be encouraged by this message, and I again look forward to seeing you soon. God bless you.